The private terminal at New York Executive Airfield buzzed with quiet efficiency. Luxury cars pulled up to the entrance, dropping off wealthy passengers headed to exclusive destinations. Among the crowd, David Turner, founder and CEO of Turner Technologies, exited a sleek black SUV. David was headed to London for an important tech conference where he'd be a keynote speaker. His company had become a leader in AI, making him one of the top entrepreneurs in the tech world. But today he wanted no fanfare, just a smooth, quiet flight on his private jet, Skyline 1. He pulled his travel bag behind him and approached Hangar 17, where his Gulfstream G700 awaited. As he walked toward the entrance, he noticed John Marshall, the airport's chief of operations, standing with the flight crew. Mark Evans, the confident pilot, Sophia Green, the indifferent co-pilot, and Emma Scott, the dismissive flight attendant. David offered a polite nod as he approached. John's expression immediately darkened, his eyes narrowing. "Excuse me, sir," John called out sharply. "This area is restricted. No unauthorized personnel allowed." "I'm here for Skyline 1, David explained calmly. "I need to board now." John crossed his arms. "Skyline 1 is reserved for a very important client. You can't loiter here. Security will be called if needed." David frowned, trying to maintain his composure. "I'm the client. Skyline 1 belongs to me." John laughed dismissively, exchanging a knowing look with Mark and Sophia. "Sure it does," Mark sneered. "And I'm the CEO." "Listen, buddy," John continued coldly. "We have a strict policy against random people wandering into the hangar. You can't just claim you own a jet." Emma rolled her eyes, muttering, "Typical." David took a deep breath. He had faced discrimination before, but this was different. He pointed to the jet. "Why don't you check the ownership records? My name's on the registration." John waved him off. "I don't have time for games." Mark chuckled. "Maybe you're here for a selfie with the jet or something." The flight crew erupted in quiet laughter. David took a slow, steady breath, fighting the familiar frustration rising within him. This wasn't the first time he had been judged by his appearance, but today, the stakes felt personal. He considered turning around and calling his assistant to clear up the confusion, but something inside him refused. He refused to back down. "I'm asking you one last time, Miss Scorned," David said, keeping his tone firm but calm. "Check the jet's registration. You'll see my name." John crossed his arms defiantly, unfazed. "Look, I don't care what story you're spinning. People like you don't fly jets like that. Now either leave or I'll have security escort you out." David's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "People like me?" "You heard me," John replied coldly. "Only authorized owners and guests are allowed here. You don't belong." Mark, the pilot, leaned against the hangar door, smirking. "Let's not waste time. Probably some delivery guy who got lost." Emma, the flight attendant, chuckled. "Or a wannabe influencer looking for a photo op." David glanced at the jet, gleaming under the hangar lights. His jet. The sting of humiliation burned inside him, but he wasn't about to let their ignorance define the outcome. "I'm done talking," David said, pulling out his phone. "We're about to settle this." David paced slowly near the edge of the hangar, phone in hand, fighting to keep his emotions in check. The sting of disrespect was familiar, but today it felt deeper. He thought about how often people like John, Mark, and Emma assume power they didn't have, judging others based on appearances, while hiding behind corporate policies. He stared at Skyline 1, the sleek Gulfstream jet. It wasn't just a symbol of success, it was a milestone representing years of sacrifice, long nights, and relentless determination. Yet here he was, reduced to a nobody by people who couldn't see past his skin color or casual clothes. For a brief moment, he considered walking away, avoiding confrontation altogether. He could have called airport management directly or sent his assistant, Rachel Turner, to fix the mess quietly. But that would mean accepting their treatment without consequences. And David was done accepting disrespect. Clenching his jaw, David scrolled through his contacts and tapped Rachel's number. "Rachel, I need you to send Skyline 1's full ownership documentation to the operations office at New York Executive Airfield. Copy the legal team too," David ordered sharply. Rachel didn't hesitate. "Consider it done. Everything will be there in minutes." David hung up and slipped his phone into his pocket. This wasn't just about clearing up a misunderstanding. It was about making a point they would never forget. Let's see how they handle the truth, he muttered, stepping back toward the hangar with calm determination. Before John could continue, David held up his hand. Save it, he said coldly, turning to the stunned flight crew. All of you off my jet now. Mark blurted out, Wait, we didn't know. I told you who I was, David interrupted him. You chose to ignore me, mock me, and treat me like garbage. There's no place for that in my company, Emma stammered. It was just a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't, David shot back. It was discrimination, plain and simple. He turned to John. Effective immediately, you're fired. Collect your things and leave the premises. Security guards, now fully aware of the situation, escorted the disgraced crew out of the hangar. Days later, Skyline Aviation's corporate headquarters in New York was tense. Every senior executive, team supervisor, and key staff member had been summoned for an emergency meeting. Rumors about the sudden firings of John Marshall, Mark Evans, Sophia Green, and Emma Scott circulated, leaving employees uneasy. David Turner entered the room with quiet authority. His expression firm and focused, he approached the podium. He adjusted the microphone and scanned the crowd, ensuring every gaze was fixed on him. Good afternoon, he began, his voice steady but sharp. I called this meeting to address something far more critical than company profits or expansion. The room fell silent. David recounted the humiliating experience in precise detail. The mockery, the refusal to check his credentials, and the dismissive treatment he endured. His tone remained controlled but resolute. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a protocol error. It was blatant discrimination, an abuse of authority fueled by prejudice. He paused, letting his words sink in. The individuals involved have been terminated for gross misconduct. But this isn't just about consequences. It's about responsibility. His gaze swept the room. Starting immediately, Skyline Aviation will implement mandatory training on diversity, respect, and ethical conduct for every employee. The room remained silent, charged with the understanding that real change was coming, and it wouldn't be optional. In the weeks that followed, David implemented sweeping changes at Skyline Aviation. New diversity and inclusion training programs became mandatory for all employees. The company also partnered with minority-owned aviation firms to create new opportunities in the industry. During a major aviation summit, David shared his story publicly for the first time. Leadership isn't about titles or wealth, he said. It's about action. You change a culture by standing up, especially when no one expects you to. His words resonated far beyond the industry, proving that real power isn't measured by what you own, but by how you use it. Subscribe now for more powerful stories that inspire action and challenge perspectives. Have you ever experienced or witnessed something similar? Share your story in the comments.